I was driving home through a Colorado snowstorm when my brakes suddenly failed on a sharp mountain curve. 3 seconds later, my truck tore through the guardrail and plunged 40 feet into the ravine below. When I woke up in the hospital, the first face I saw was my daughter's. She was sobbing, telling everyone she had almost lost her father. I truly believed those tears. I was wrong. While I lay unconscious, she was playing the devoted daughter online, using my broken body as a backdrop to raise money in my name, and quietly trying to drain my accounts. And when I finally uncovered the truth, I realized the crash was never an unfortunate accident. That was the moment everything began to change. Thank you for choosing to spend your time here. Out of millions of videos, you're here, and that matters to me. Now I'm curious. Where are you listening from today? And how old are you? Don't be shy, type it below. I want to see who this story is reaching. Maybe someone your age needs to hear this. And just to be transparent, some details in this story have been adapted for dramatic and educational purposes. Any similarity to real names or situations is unintentional, but the insight and reflection behind it are meant to stay with you. The mountain road twisted like a serpent through the Colorado darkness, each curve sharper than the last. My headlights cut weak paths through the falling snow, illuminating nothing but white chaos ahead. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling the decades-old calluses on my palms, remnants of years, working alongside my late wife Betty in our real estate ventures. She'd always been the navigator on drives like this, reading maps, with her reading glasses perched on her nose, warning me about upcoming turns with that gentle voice I still heard in my dreams. 3 years. 3 years since I'd lost her, and the passenger seat still felt too empty. I glanced at it out of habit, half expecting to see her there, then forced my eyes back to the road. The evening with George had been good, necessary even. My old friend had a way of pulling me out of the isolation I'd fallen into since Betty's passing. We'd shared whiskey and stories at his place, the kind of easy companionship that comes from 2 decades of friendship. George had insisted I stay longer, wait for the snow to ease up, but I'd waved him off. I knew these roads. I'd driven them 1,000 times. Besides, I had someone waiting at home now. Vanessa had texted me earlier, asking when I'd be back, adding a heart emoji the way she used to when she was younger. My daughter, my only child. The thought warmed me against the February cold seeping through the truck's old heating system. At least I still had her. At least Betty had left me that. The memory surfaced unbidden. Vanessa 3 weeks ago, standing in my kitchen with that concerned expression daughters reserve for aging fathers. "Dad, your truck is making weird noises. The brakes feel soft when I borrowed it last week. You need to get it checked before winter gets worse." She'd been insistent, almost pushy about it, which wasn't like her. But she'd arranged everything, found a garage with amazing reviews, even made the appointment herself. I'd appreciated it at the time, thought it showed she cared. The truck had come back the same day. "All fixed," she'd said, handing me the keys with a smile. They said everything's perfect now. I pressed the brake pedal gently as I approached the next curve, a sharp right-hander I'd navigated countless times. The mountain dropped away on the left side, protected only by a metal guardrail that looked far too flimsy in my headlights. Nothing happened. I pressed harder. The pedal went to the floor like stepping into empty air. No resistance, no slowing, nothing. "No, no, no!" The words came out as a whisper, then a shout as I pumped the brake pedal frantically. My truck accelerated instead, gravity pulling it down the steep grade. The curve rushed toward me like a predator. I yanked the steering wheel, trying to force the turn. But momentum and ice don't negotiate. The tires screamed against the road, a sound I'd remember forever, if I survived long enough to remember anything. The guardrail exploded toward my windshield in a shower of sparks and shrieking metal. Then I was airborne. Time stretched and compressed simultaneously. I saw the ravine below dark and hungry trees reaching up like skeletal fingers. I saw Betty's face in my mind, younger, laughing at something I'd said on our honeymoon. I saw Vanessa as a little girl, gap-toothed and innocent, running into my arms after her first day of kindergarten. I saw my life ending in a twisted heap of metal at the bottom of a frozen Colorado ravine. The impact came like a sledgehammer, sudden, violent, absolute. The airbag exploded into my face with a force that felt like being punched by a professional boxer. My head snapped sideways. Something crunched ribs, maybe, or the truck's frame, I couldn't tell. Glass rained down, though I barely registered it, through the cotton wool sensation filling my skull. Then darkness reached up and pulled me under. Voices, distant, muffled, like listening underwater. But here, down in the ravine, I can see the vehicle. A man's voice, panicked, but trying to stay calm. Not anyone I knew. I tried to open my eyes, managed only slits. Red and blue lights pulsed against the snow painting, everything in nauseating strobes. "Sir, can you hear me, sir? Stay still, help is coming." Closer now. The stranger's face swam into my blurred vision, middle-aged, weathered, the face of someone who'd lived through Colorado winters. Mr. Terry Hoffman, I'd learn later. A local who'd been driving home from his shift, who'd seen my headlights disappear from the road, who'd called 911 and scrambled down the embankment without hesitation. I wanted to thank him. My mouth wouldn't form words. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The stranger kept talking, keeping me conscious, though his words blurred together. Something about staying awake, about help arriving, about everything being okay. Everything wasn't okay. Everything hurt in ways I didn't have names for. Then I heard her voice. Oh my goodness, Dad. Vanessa, my daughter. Relief flooded through the pain. She'd come. Of course she'd come. She'd been worried when I didn't answer her text. She must have called emergency services, must have tracked my phone. Through the fog of pain and confusion, I tried to focus on her face as she appeared beside the ambulance. Her features barely visible in the chaos of emergency lights and falling snow. She was crying. I could hear it in her voice, see the shine of tears on her cheeks. But something was wrong. Something in her eyes visible for just a moment when the ambulance lights swung across her face. Not relief, not fear. Something else. Something cold and calculating, like she was measuring, assessing, determining. What? The thought tried to form, but pain scattered it. Maybe I was imagining things. The crash, the trauma, the fear, it was making me paranoid. This was Vanessa, my baby girl. She loved me. She had to. "Sir, we need to secure his neck. IT possible internal injuries. We get him loaded now." Hands lifted me, professional and efficient. The pain spiked to unbearable levels, and I heard someone screaming before I realized it was me. The world tilted as they moved me onto a stretcher. Then I was inside the ambulance, harsh fluorescent lights burning my eyes. Vanessa's face appeared above me one more time as they were closing the doors. She was saying something, her mouth moving, but the words wouldn't reach my ears. Her husband Donovan stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, his expression unreadable in the shadows. And in that moment, in that knife edge of consciousness, before the darkness came back for good, I could have sworn I saw something impossible. Vanessa wasn't looking at me with concern anymore. She was looking at the EMTs, listening to them work her face, carefully composed into grief, while her eyes tracked their movements with an intensity that didn't match her tears. Like she was waiting, watching, hoping for. Number 1. I was wrong. I had to be wrong. The drugs they'd given me were playing tricks. The trauma was making me paranoid. This was my daughter. My Vanessa. The little girl who'd cried when we'd had to put down our old dog. The teenager who'd held my hand at Betty's funeral. The woman who just made sure my truck got its brakes fixed. The brakes that had failed. 3 weeks after she'd taken my truck to get them fixed. Through my fading vision, I thought I saw something strange in my daughter's eyes as she stood there above me watching the ambulance doors close. But surely I was imagining things. Surely she wouldn't... No, that's impossible. Isn't it? The steady beep of machines pulled me out of darkness. For a moment, I didn't know where I was or how long I'd been gone. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy. When I forced them open, harsh fluorescent light pierced my skull. White ceiling tiles, the sterile smell of antiseptic, the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. I tried to shift. Agony shot through my ribs. "Mr. Foster," a woman's voice said gently. "Can you hear me?" I turned my head toward the sound. A nurse in blue scrubs stood beside my bed, dark hair pulled back. Her badge read, "Evelyn Rivers." "Where?" My voice was a dry rasp. "Memorial Regional Hospital in Denver," she replied, lifting a cup of water to my lips. "You've been here 36 hours. Do you remember what happened? 36 hours. A day and a half erased." I took a sip. Cold water cleared the fog slightly. Memory flickered back the mountain road snow falling steadily the moment I pressed the brake pedal and felt nothing. The violent drop as my truck plunged over the embankment. "The accident," I whispered. "My truck. The brakes." Nurse Rivers nodded. "You're very lucky. Dr. Chambers will want to examine you now that you're awake." She stepped out, leaving me alone with machines and fractured recollections. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the crash in my mind. The impact, the airbag exploding outward. Then darkness, and in that darkness a dream. Betty, she'd been sitting beside my bed, her hand warm in mine. Her voice steady and clear. "Be careful, Edmund. Be very careful." I shut my eyes briefly. She had been gone 3 years, yet the ache remained. The door opened. A man in a white coat entered, mid-50s gray at the temples. "Mr. Foster, I'm Dr. Bradley Chambers. How are you feeling?" Like I drove off a cliff. A faint smile touched his mouth. "That's not far from the truth." He checked my pupils. "You suffered a concussion, 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising, and multiple lacerations. Considering the fall approximately 40 feet, you're extremely fortunate. The airbag saved your life. 40 feet. Your truck is totaled," he added. "But barring complications, I expect a full recovery. We'll keep you for observation." "Lucky." The word felt strange. "My daughter?" I asked. "Vanessa. Has she been here?" A subtle glance passed between the doctor and Nurse Rivers. "I'll let Nurse Rivers update you on visitors," Dr. Chambers said smoothly. "Rest for now." After he left, I looked at the nurse. "She came twice," Nurse Rivers said carefully. "Yesterday afternoon and this morning." "Is she still here?" "No. She stayed about 20 minutes each time." 20 minutes. Out of 36 unconscious hours. "Did she leave a message?" The nurse hesitated, lowering her voice. "I probably shouldn't say this, but both visits, she spent most of the time recording videos, crying, talking about how worried she was. The moment she stopped recording, the tears stopped too. Performative." The word landed heavily. "My phone?" I asked. "In the drawer." She handed it to me. It survived. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. Notifications flooded the screen. Then one caught my attention. Vanessa Foster has tagged you in a post. I opened it. Vanessa sat in what looked like the hospital waiting area, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to do, she said. My father is fighting for his life. The doctors say he needs emergency surgery, but insurance won't cover it. We're looking at $120,000. My blood ran cold, so I'm asking for help. Please help me save my dad. He's all I have. The screen shifted to a fundraising page. Help Edmund Foster get life-saving surgery. Mr. Foster, Nurse Rivers asked softly. You've gone pale. Emergency surgery, I said slowly. Dr. Chambers said that, no. She frowned. You need rest, not surgery. The room seemed to tilt. $120,000, I murmured. I need to call her. The phone rang 4 times before Vanessa answered. Dad. Her voice brimmed with emotion. You're awake. How do you feel? I'm fine, I said carefully. A little bruised. Vanessa, I saw your video. Dr. Chambers says I don't need surgery. A pause. Oh. Well, that's wonderful news. I must have misunderstood. It's been stressful. $120,000. People want to help Dad. They've been generous. Once bills come in, we'll use it for that. When are you coming back? I'm swamped right now. Work. But I'll try tomorrow. I was so scared. The line went dead. I sat there, the nurse's words echoing. The moment she stopped recording, the tears stopped too. 3 weeks earlier, Vanessa had insisted on taking my truck to a garage I'd never used. When I'd offered to go along, she'd brushed it off. Friend of a friend. Special discount. I'd thought she was being thoughtful. The brakes had worked perfectly before that visit, but 3 weeks later on a snowy mountain pass, they had failed completely. Not gradually, completely. I closed my eyes. This was Vanessa, my daughter, Betty's daughter. Yet the fundraiser, the false surgery, the performative tears, lying in that sterile hospital room, one terrible question formed. What if the brakes hadn't failed by chance? What if someone had tampered with them? No, not Vanessa. But then why lie? The thought pressed harder, darker. What if my daughter wanted me gone? I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's face in that video, the tears switching on and off like a faucet. The fundraiser for a surgery I didn't need. The way she'd insisted on taking my truck to that garage 3 weeks ago. Betty's voice echoed in my mind, something she'd always said when we were building our business trust. But verify. It was her rule for every contract, every partnership, every major decision. Trust, but verify. I picked up my phone. My fingers were steadier this morning, though my ribs still burned with every breath. Outside the window, Denver lay under fresh snow, the sun turning everything white and pristine, deceptively peaceful. Philip Kendall answered on the second ring. Edmund, his voice carried concern. I heard about your accident. How are you holding up? Philip had been Betty's lawyer before we married, handling her family's estate. Over time, he'd become more than our attorney. He was a friend, one of the few people I trusted without question. Philip, I need your help. I kept my voice low, aware Nurse Rivers could return at any moment. Something's wrong. Very wrong. Tell me. So I did. I told him about the video, the fundraiser, the lie about emergency surgery. I described Vanessa's brief visits, the way her tears vanished when the camera stopped. I told him about the garage and how she'd insisted I stay home. Philip was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his tone had shifted, professional, now precise. These are serious concerns, Edmund. But before we draw conclusions, we gather facts. First, I'll call Roger Caldwell. He handles your accounts. Yes, I'll speak to him and call you back. Those 10 minutes felt endless. I stared at the ceiling, counting tiles, trying to steady my breathing. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe grief and medication were clouding my judgment. My phone rang. Edmund Phillips said, voice grim, "I just spoke with Roger. You need to hear this." What did he say? 2 days ago, February 17th. Vanessa attempted to withdraw $200,000 from your joint emergency account. The room seemed to tilt. What Roger flagged it. That amount requires dual authorization, your signature and hers. When he called, she claimed you'd approved it verbally, but were too ill to come in. Roger didn't believe her. He placed a hold. $200,000. 2 days after my accident. I never authorized anything, I whispered. I was unconscious. I know. Roger sensed something was wrong. Combined with the fraudulent fundraiser, this suggests financial exploitation at minimum. I want her access revoked immediately. I'll have the account frozen within the hour. But there's more we must do. He paused. We need to examine your truck. Modern vehicles leave forensic evidence when brakes fail, fluid leaks, diagnostic data, mechanical patterns. If someone tampered with them, a qualified mechanic can tell. You believe me, I said quietly. Betty trusted you with her life. That's enough for me. His voice softened. I'll find where it was towed and arrange an examination. After we hung up, I lay back mind racing. She'd tried to drain my account while I was unconscious, while posting tearful pleas for money I didn't need. The woman in that video didn't feel like my daughter. An hour passed. I forced myself to eat the hospital breakfast, tasteless oatmeal and weak coffee. I needed strength. My phone buzzed again. Edmund I located your truck. It was towed to a salvage yard near Commerce City. I have a forensic mechanic who works with law enforcement. He can examine it this afternoon, Philip. A woman's voice cut in faintly. He had me on speaker. This is important. That's my assistant. One moment. Muffled voices. Then Philip returned his tone tight. Edmund, I have bad news. My grip tightened. What happened? I spoke with the yard manager. Your truck was crushed this morning. The word felt unreal. Crushed. Someone paid cash to have it processed immediately, before the insurance adjuster could inspect it, before anyone examined it. Paperwork came through at 6 a.m. It was in the crusher by 7. 6 a.m. While I lay in this hospital bed, someone had erased the evidence. They're covering their tracks, I said slowly. Philip, this wasn't an accident. Someone tampered with my brakes. I'm inclined to agree, he replied. Whoever did this knows exactly what they're doing. They're eliminating evidence and exploiting you while you're vulnerable. And if they went to this much trouble, he didn't finish. If they went this far, they knew what they'd done. And they might try again. I need to leave this hospital, I said, sitting up despite the pain. If Vanessa comes back, don't tell her anything. Act weak if you must. But be careful. If she's desperate enough to attempt this, once there's no telling what she'll do, if she realizes you suspect. After we ended the call, silence settled over the room. Snow drifted past the window. Somewhere out there, my truck was nothing but a compacted cube of metal. The physical evidence was gone, but the truth remained. Someone wanted me out of the way. Someone who knew which garage could quietly sabotage a brake line. Someone with access to my accounts. Someone who could cry on cue for a camera. Someone who called me Dad. I thought of Betty again, of the dream I'd had. Be careful, Edmund. I would be careful, but I would not be blind. If they destroyed the truck, it meant they feared what it might reveal. It meant this was no mistake. It meant I was becoming a liability, a loose end. I had to leave before Vanessa returned. I couldn't let her see understanding in my eyes, because if she realized I knew I might not survive the next accident. Freedom came at dawn, wrapped in George Whitman's worried eyes, and a wheelchair I didn't want to admit I needed. You sure about this, Ed? George kept his voice low as he helped me into his Buick. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty, the sky just beginning to lighten. The doc said you should stay another few days. I need somewhere safe to recover. I settled into the passenger seat, my ribs protesting. Somewhere quiet. George had been my friend for 20 years, a retired teacher who'd moved into the neighborhood and became the brother I never had. After Betty died, he'd checked on me daily, sat with me through those first terrible months. If I could trust anyone, it was George. Safe, he repeated, glancing at me. Ed, what's really going on? You called at 5 in the morning, told me not to mention it to anyone, not even Vanessa. I watched Denver slide past the window. George, I need you to listen. Keep an open mind, I told him. Not everything, but enough. The fundraiser for a surgery I didn't need. The attempted withdrawal while I was unconscious. The truck crushed before anyone could examine it. George was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. Ed, are you certain you're not just in shock after a trauma like that? I know how it sounds. I turned to face him. But I need you to trust me. Something is very wrong. I can't go home right now. He studied my face at a red light. Whatever he saw there convinced him. All right. You can stay as long as you need. But Ed, if you're wrong, I hope I am, I said quietly. George's house was modest, quiet, exactly what I needed. He'd set up the guest room, fresh sheets and extra pillows. Coffee, he asked as I lowered myself onto the couch. Please. He disappeared into the kitchen. I closed my eyes, letting exhaustion wash over me. For the first time in days, I could breathe. No nurses, no risk of Vanessa appearing. The doorbell rang. George emerged puzzled. Expecting someone, ice flooded my veins. Through the window, Vanessa's silver sedan in the driveway. How had they found me? It's fine, I said, forcing calm. Answer it. Vanessa's face transformed shock, melting into perfect concern. Dad, what are you doing here? Why did you leave the hospital? Her eyes glistened. The nurse said you just checked yourself out. Behind her, Donovan stepped inside. Mid-30s, athletic build, expensive suit. Cold eyes that didn't match Vanessa's performance. I'm fine, sweetheart. I just needed rest. But you should have called us. She sat beside me, pulling a folder from her bag. Actually, that's why we're here. We brought paperwork. She spread documents across the coffee table. George moved closer. It's just a temporary transfer, Vanessa explained. The house would go into my name temporarily so I can handle medical bills and property maintenance while you recover. Nothing permanent. I stared at the deed transfer documents. All neatly prepared, just needing my signature. That's thoughtful, Vanessa. But I'll manage my own affairs. Something flickered behind her eyes. Dad, you just survived a terrible accident. You're on pain medication. We're trying to help you. I said no. Donovan spoke for the first time, voice smooth and cold. Mr. Foster, with all due respect, you nearly died 3 days ago. You left the hospital against medical advice. He leaned forward. We're trying to protect your interests. My interests? I met his gaze. By having me sign over my house while I'm supposedly too impaired to make decisions, the mask slipped. Donovan's jaw tightened. Vanessa tried again, tears welling. Dad, please. Don't you trust your own daughter? Mom would have wanted me to take care of you. The Betty card. The guilt trip. George cleared his throat. I think Edmund needs rest. Maybe you should call before visiting next time. Donovan stood, his posture shifting. Less son-in-law, more threat. We're just trying to help family, Mr. Whitman. I understand. Edmund said no. George's voice was mild but firm. Vanessa gathered the papers, tears drying fast. Fine. We'll come back when you're feeling more yourself, Dad. She kissed my forehead. I love you. We're just worried. At the door, Donovan paused. He looked back at me, any pretense of concern gone. Cold calculation. We'll be back, he said quietly. Not a promise. A warning. After they left, George locked the door, his face pale. Ed, I think you might be right. That young man. I know. I watched through the window as their car pulled away. Donovan turned his head, looking back. His expression wasn't worry or frustration. It was the look of someone whose plan had hit a snag. Someone calculating their next move. And right then, I knew with absolute certainty my son-in-law wanted me gone. The only question was how far Vanessa was willing to go along with it. 3 days after the confrontation at George's house, I made my decision. I couldn't hide forever. If Vanessa and Donovan were going to make their move, I needed to be ready, and I needed proof. You're sure about this? George asked, as he helped me pack the few things I'd brought to his place. Ed, they know where you live. They could come back. I'm counting on it. I folded a shirt slowly, my ribs still aching with every movement. But this time I'll be ready. The house in Cherry Creek looked exactly as I'd left it, the Victorian Betty and I had built more than 30 years ago. 3 stories of memories. Lately, it had felt like a trap waiting to spring. Now it was my trap. Philip arrived an hour later, bringing a man in his 40s with 2 heavy equipment cases. Edmund, this is Gary Mitchell, best security technician in Denver, Philip said. He's going to make your house tell us everything. Gary shook my hand. Mr. Foster, Philip filled me in. You need discreet surveillance. Everything I install will be invisible and tamper-proof. For the next 4 hours, I watched him turn my home into a silent witness. He moved with practiced efficiency, placing cameras in spots I would never have considered. Living room behind that frame. Entryway inside the light fixture. Office built into the bookshelf. Staircase crown molding corner. Master bedroom inside the smoke detector. Won't they see them, I asked. Gary smiled faintly. They're smaller than a dime. Motion-activated night vision, and they upload to secure cloud storage in real time. Even if someone finds one and destroys it, the footage is already saved. No one can erase what's recorded. By evening, 5 cameras covered every entrance and key room. Gary handed me a tablet displaying live feeds. You can monitor from this or your phone. Everything records automatically. If something happens, you'll have proof. After they left, I sat in Betty's favorite chair by the window and stared at the screen. 5 quiet views of an empty house. Waiting, I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, February 26th, I drove to George's for coffee. We'd agreed I should keep a routine. Be predictable. Give them opportunity. I was gone 90 minutes. When I checked the tablet after returning, my stomach dropped. Three motion alerts, 10:47 a.m., 10:52 a.m., 11:03 a.m. I opened the footage. Vanessa let herself in with a key I'd forgotten she still had. She moved with purpose, no hesitation, straight to my office. I watched as my daughter went to the filing cabinet and began pulling drawers open, sifting through documents. When she reached the safe hidden behind Betty's portrait, she tried the combination. Once, twice, 3 times. I had changed it after the accident. Her face tightened with frustration, anger, a cold calculation I didn't recognize. She moved to my desk, photographing documents with her phone, tax returns, insurance policies, investment statements. After 20 minutes, she left as quietly as she'd entered. I sat in the dim room replaying the footage. My daughter breaking into my home, stealing my private records. This is enough, I told Philip when he came that evening. Breaking and entering. We go to the police. He watched carefully, expression unreadable. It's something. But trespassing, even with document theft, is minor. She'll claim she was concerned about you, that she still considered this her family home. A skilled attorney could argue there was no malicious intent. She was trying to get into the safe, I know. But we need more. We need proof of what they did to your brakes. Evidence of intent to harm, not just to steal. This establishes a pattern of deception, but it won't prove attempted murder. The next day, February 27th, they returned. Both of them. I was upstairs when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the live feed. Vanessa unlocked the door again. Donovan followed. He moved differently. Where she'd been hurried, so he was methodical. He walked slowly through each room, studying everything. In the living room, he checked the windows, testing locks and frames. In the kitchen, he opened the basement door and looked down the stairs. He wasn't searching. He was assessing. When they entered my office, Donovan stopped at the safe and took photographs. He turned to Vanessa and said something I couldn't hear. The camera was too far to capture audio clearly. They stayed 15 minutes. Then they left. That evening, Philip returned. We sat in my office, the same room Donovan had surveyed and reviewed the footage. This is worse, Philip said quietly. He's not stealing. He's evaluating, planning. The police will say he visited his father-in-law. No damage. Nothing taken. They'll see speculation, not crime. Philip looked at me steadily. This proves they're up to something, but it doesn't prove brake tampering. It doesn't prove attempted harm. I stared at the frozen image of Donovan examining my safe, his expression cold and analytical. So what do we need? We need them to make a clearer move. Something concrete we can document, something that proves intent beyond doubt. He paused. And I believe they will. That's not the behavior of someone who's walking away. That's someone preparing. He was right. We had proof of trespassing, proof of attempted theft, but not enough to prove what they'd done to my truck or what they might try next. As I watched Donovan's eyes sweep across my home on the replay, studying it, like a predator studying territory, a certainty settled in my chest. The worst wasn't over. It was coming. They say the internet never forgets, but it believes lies faster than truth. The morning of March 1st began with a text from George. You need to see this. I'm coming over. I was still in my bathrobe, coffee halfway to my lips, when he arrived 20 minutes later. One look at his face told me it was bad. Ed Vanessa posted something. His hands trembled as he pulled out his tablet. It's everywhere. The video filled the screen. Vanessa sat in her car, face blotchy from crying, hair disheveled, makeup smeared. She looked exhausted, defeated the image of a devoted daughter pushed to her limit. "I don't know what to do anymore," she whispered to the camera. "My father, he's refusing treatment. The doctor said he needs medical supervision after the accident, but he checked himself out. He's accusing me of terrible things." Her voice cracked convincingly. "I think the crash affected him more than we realized. He's not himself. I'm so scared for him." She wiped her eyes, a gesture so natural it felt rehearsed to perfection. "If anyone knows how to help someone who won't accept help, please. I just want my dad back." The video ended. Below it, 50,000 views, 2,300 comments, 4,100 shares. George scrolled through the comments, his expression darkening. "Poor girl, she's trying so hard. Sounds like elder abuse. Someone should do a wellness check. He needs a psychiatric evaluation." So heartbreaking when parents turn against their children. I stared at the screen, feeling hollow. 50,000 strangers, all convinced I was a paranoid old man unraveling after an accident. "Ed, I'm sorry," George said quietly. "This is spreading fast. People are sharing it, adding their own stories. It's turning into something bigger." My phone began buzzing, then buzzing again. Calls and texts from distant acquaintances, some concerned, some accusatory, all demanding answers. I let them go to voicemail. "She's destroying your reputation," George said, "making sure that if you accuse her, no one will believe you." He was right. She was building a narrative, unstable father-devoted daughter. By the time I spoke the truth, it would sound like delusion. My phone rang again. Franklin Ashford. Franklin had been Betty's business partner for years. After she died, he'd stayed in touch holidays, birthdays, occasional lunches. A steady presence. A man of integrity. Edmund. His voice was calm but firm. "I saw the video. I've known you 30 years. I don't believe a word of it. Betty trusted you with everything. I trust you too." What's happening? Relief hit me harder than anger had. One person. Just one who didn't doubt me. "Franklin." "It's complicated," I said, glancing at George. "Vanessa isn't who she's pretending to be. The accident wasn't an accident. And that video, it's designed to make me look unstable so no one believes me when I expose her." A pause. "Then what do you need? Just believe me. I'm working with my lawyer. We're gathering evidence. It helps knowing someone's in my corner." "Always," he said. "Betty would never forgive me if I wasn't. Call if you need anything." After he hung up, the phone kept buzzing. Then Philip's name appeared. "I assume you've seen the video," he said. 50,000 people have. "Don't engage," he said sharply. "Don't post. Don't comment. Don't defend yourself online. That's what she wants, for you to look defensive and erratic." "Philip, people think I'm losing my mind." "Let them," he replied. "We're gathering evidence footage of her breaking into your house, financial records of the attempted withdrawal, the destroyed truck. When we move with facts. Her video is theater. Ours will be law." I wanted to argue. Every instinct told me to defend myself publicly. But he was right. "How long do I let her paint me as unstable?" I asked. "Not long. We're building a case. Once we have enough, we go to Detective Paul Garrett fraud and elder exploitation. But we need ironclad proof. If we move too early, she'll use this video to claim you're the delusional one falsely accusing your devoted daughter." After we ended the call, I made the mistake of reading more comments. "Someone needs to put him in a facility." Classic dementia signs. Poor Vanessa, doing her best. George gently took the tablet from my hands. "Stop. It's poison." He was right. But the damage lingered. Each comment wasn't just insult, it was strategy. She had weaponized sympathy, turned public opinion into a shield, Ed George said quietly. What if this is just the beginning? What if she uses this to have me declared incompetent? I finished. The thought had already taken root. She could petition the court, use the video as evidence, claim I'm mentally unfit, seek conservatorship. George's face drained of color. Can she? With public sympathy and the right attorney? Possibly. I stared at Vanessa's frozen, tear-streaked face on the screen. She's not just attacking my reputation. She's laying groundwork to take my rights. Let them think they're winning, Philip had said. But as notifications continued flashing, calls, messages, strangers diagnosing me from a 30-second video, I felt the weight of something larger unfolding. If she petitioned a judge and convinced them I was incompetent, I would lose everything. My home, my assets, my authority over my own life. She would control it all under the guise of protection, and tens of thousands of people would applaud her for it. They would see a devoted daughter saving her troubled father from himself. They would never see the truth that this was not concern, not love, not fear. It was strategy. And if I miscalculated even once, the next move wouldn't be a video. It would be a courtroom. There are traps meant for animals, others meant for people. The one being set in my own home was meant for me. I'd gone to bed early on March 3rd, exhausted from another day of phone calls and worried questions. People who'd seen Vanessa's video wondering if I was okay, if I needed help. Each conversation was torture, trying to sound stable and rational, while knowing that 50,000 strangers thought I was losing my mind. I turned off the lights at 10 p.m. By 10:15, I was asleep. I didn't know that at 11:03 p.m. my back door would open, that someone would slip inside my home, moving through the darkness with practiced ease. I didn't know any of this until 7 the next morning, when I woke up and checked the overnight camera footage like I did every day. And then I saw him. The timestamp read 11:03 p.m. Night vision mode turned everything gray-green, ghostly. The back door, the one that opened into the mudroom, swung inward. A figure stepped through, dressed in dark clothes, wearing gloves and a baseball cap pulled low. "Donovan!" My hands started shaking as I watched him move through my house. He knew where he was going, no hesitation, no searching. Straight through the kitchen, into the hallway, to the stairs. The wooden staircase connecting the first and second floors had been there since the house was built. Betty and I had refinished it together in 2018, spending weekends sanding and staining until it gleamed. She'd been so proud of it. Our staircase, she'd called it. Just like us, solid, beautiful, built to last. On the screen, Donovan knelt at the base of those stairs. He pulled a small bag from his jacket, removed tools. A screwdriver. Something else I couldn't identify. He went to work on the third step from the top. Then the fifth. The same steps I always used when coming down for breakfast. The same pattern every single morning for 30 years. Right foot on the third step, left on the fifth. Donovan was methodical. He loosened screws, tested them with his hand, checking the give. The steps shifted under his touch, not broken yet, but unstable. Waiting for the right amount of weight. He tested each one twice, nodding with satisfaction. Then he packed his tools, checked his work one more time, and left through the back door at 11:17 p.m., 14 minutes. That's all it took to turn my home into a death trap. I sat frozen, watching the empty hallway on the screen. My coffee had gone cold in my hand. The morning sunlight streaming through the window felt obscene, too bright, too cheerful for what I'd just witnessed. Slowly, carefully, I stood up. My legs felt unsteady as I walked toward the stairs. They looked normal, beautiful even in the morning light. The rich wood grain Betty had loved so much. Nothing obviously wrong. I pressed my hand against the third step from the top. It shifted just slightly, but enough. Then the fifth step. Same thing. A subtle give that wouldn't be noticeable unless you were looking for it. But add the weight of a person, especially a 65-year-old man with cracked ribs still healing from a car accident, and those steps would collapse. I'd tumble down a full flight of stairs. At my age with my injuries, that kind of fall could easily be fatal, or at least break bones, cause serious trauma. Another accident. Another tragedy. Poor Edmund Foster, still recovering from his car crash, fell down the stairs in his own home. So sad. His devoted daughter had tried to help him, but he'd been too paranoid to accept it. My phone was in my hand before I'd consciously decided to call. Philip answered on the first ring. Philip, they tried again. My voice came out shakier than I wanted. Last night, the stairs. If I hadn't checked the cameras this morning, if I'd just walked down like I always do, and Edmund slowed down. Tell me exactly what happened, I told him. Describe the footage, the timestamp Donovan's methodical work on the stairs. When I finished, Philip was quiet for a long moment. Edmund, don't touch anything else. Don't go near those stairs. I'm calling Detective Paul Garrett right now. His voice was tight controlled. This has gone way beyond trespassing. This is attempted bodily harm. We have video evidence of someone sabotaging your home with clear intent to injure you. What do I do? Stay there. Don't let anyone in except me and the police. We're documenting everything, the loosened stairs, the video footage, the pattern of behavior. Edmund. He paused. This changes everything. We can't wait anymore. We have enough to press charges. After we hung up, I sat down carefully on the floor of the hallway, staring at those stairs. The ones Betty and I had refinished together. The ones I'd walked up and down thousands of times. The ones that were supposed to carry me safely between the floors of my own home. Donovan had turned them into a weapon. I thought about the brake lines on my truck, cut so cleanly, the mechanic would have spotted tampering if the truck hadn't been crushed. I thought about Vanessa's attempts to drain my accounts to get me to sign over my house. The video painting me as mentally unstable. And now this a trap set in my own home, timed for my morning routine. They weren't going to stop. That was the terrible truth settling into my bones. Donovan had tried once with the truck. Now the stairs. Tomorrow it would be something else. The gas line. The medication in my bathroom cabinet. A slip in the shower. How many ways could someone turn a home into a trap before one of them actually worked? I looked at the stairs, our stairs, Betty's and mine, and felt something harden inside me. I'd been playing defense, gathering evidence, trying to prove what they'd done. But they were escalating. Each attempt more brazen, more direct. If I kept waiting, kept collecting proof while they kept trying, eventually they'd succeed. Eventually, one of their accidents would work, and then all the evidence in the world wouldn't matter because I'd be gone. For 65 years, I had handled my own problems. But this time, I needed justice on my side. Betty used to say that faith in the legal system wasn't naive, it was necessary. She'd practiced law for 20 years before retiring, and she'd seen how the system worked when decent people used it properly. The law is a tool, Edmund, she once told me. Like any tool, it's only as effective as the person wielding it. I was about to find out if she was right. Detective Paul Garrett arrived at 2 o'clock that afternoon. Mid-40s, clean-cut, in a dark suit, carrying a leather notebook. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp, the kind of officer who noticed everything. "Mr. Foster, I understand you have concerns about your daughter and son-in-law." He sat across from me at the kitchen table, Philip beside me. "Start from the beginning?" So I did. The accident on February 15th. Brakes that shouldn't have failed. Waking in the hospital to discover Vanessa had spent barely 40 minutes at my bedside, long enough to film tearful videos. The fraudulent fundraiser asking for $120,000 for surgery I didn't need. Garrett listened without interruption, writing in neat, deliberate strokes. I told him about the attempted withdrawal, $200,000, while I was unconscious. The truck crushed before inspection. Vanessa breaking into my home twice. And finally Donovan's midnight visit on March 3rd, loosening screws on my staircase. "These are serious allegations," Garrett said when I finished. His tone remained calm. "Do you have evidence?" Philip opened his laptop. "Everything is on video." For 30 minutes, Garrett watched the footage. Vanessa entering on February 26th, rifling through my office photographing documents. Her return on the 27th with Donovan, his slow survey of the house. And then, the most damning clip, Donovan crouched at my staircase after midnight, carefully loosening the screws, testing the railing to be sure it would fail. Garrett's expression barely shifted, but I saw his jaw tighten as Donovan pressed down on the step, confirming it would collapse. When the screen went dark, Garrett closed the laptop and looked at me. "Mr. Foster, why didn't you contact us sooner after the accident, after the attempted withdrawal?" I had prepared for that. "She's my daughter," I said quietly. "I needed certainty before I did this to her." I kept hoping I was wrong. Something flickered in his eyes, understanding. "Family cases are the hardest," he said. He tapped his notebook. "What we have is clear breaking and entering, destruction of property with intent to cause bodily harm, financial exploitation, possibly more, but we'll let the evidence speak." "Is it enough?" I asked. "Can you arrest them for trespassing and property damage?" "Yes. We have video." He leaned back, but a defense attorney could argue the stairs were an accident, that Mr. Reed was checking them for safety. "Trespassing. She'll say she was worried about you, still considers it her home." My stomach dropped. "So all of this establishes a pattern," Philip said evenly. "Detective, is there a way to obtain more concrete proof? Something that eliminates doubt?" Garrett studied us. "What are you proposing?" "A controlled situation," Philip replied. "Let them believe Edmund is vulnerable. Give them an opportunity they can't resist. Catch them in the act with officers present." Garrett turned to me. "That makes you bait. It's risky. They've already tried to harm you twice." "I'll do it," I said without hesitation. "I want this finished before they succeed." He held my gaze, weighing the decision. Then he nodded slowly. "All right. Let's discuss details." We spent the next hour outlining the plan. I would appear weak and careless, mention in a phone call that I kept $50,000 in cash in my home safe. I would imply exhaustion, say I'd be taking sleeping pills early. Create opportunity. "We'll wire the house for audio as well as video," Garrett said. "2 officers will be with me. We'll position ourselves in the guest bedroom and basement. If they break in, and I believe they will, we'll have burglary at minimum. Depending on their actions, possibly more." "You think they'll come?" I said. "Mr. Foster, they're in serious financial trouble. I checked after Philip contacted me. They owe significant money to some very unpleasant individuals. Desperation changes people. They become dangerous," I said. "Exactly." Garrett closed his notebook. "Understand the risks. If they bring weapons, panic, or escalate, we intervene immediately. But there is always a moment of exposure. You must be prepared for that. I thought about Betty, about brake lines cut in darkness, about stairs turned into a trap. I understand. Let's end this. Garrett stood and shook my hand. We'll set up tomorrow night, March 5th. Give them time to hear about the cash. Can you manage one more day? I've managed this long. As Philip walked him to the door, I heard quiet discussion procedure chain of custody documentation. Doing it properly. Exactly as Betty would have insisted. At the threshold, Garrett paused. Mr. Foster, desperate people do reckless things. Your daughter and son-in-law are cornered. When someone feels trapped, they can be more dangerous than you expect. Be careful. I will. After they left, the house felt unnaturally quiet. I stood at the base of the staircase I couldn't safely use, thinking about the trap we were setting. Betty had believed in justice, in the system, in following the law instead of seeking revenge. I was honoring that, bringing in law enforcement, building a case the right way. But as evening settled and I locked the doors, one question lingered. Had I just secured my freedom or sealed their fate? When Donovan's calculating eyes met police badges and handcuffs, would he surrender quietly, or would desperation drive him to something worse? I supposed I would find out tomorrow night. Acting had never been my strength. But that day I had to give the performance of my life. George's kitchen table was covered with notes. Philip's carefully scripted talking points, things I needed to say, details I had to remember to mention. Practice runs of the phone call I'd make to Vanessa. You sure about this, Edmund? George asked for the third time that morning. Lying to your own daughter. George, she's already lied to the entire world about me. I picked up one of the script pages. This is just returning the favor. Betty's voice echoed in my memory, something she'd said years ago during a tough business negotiation. Sometimes you have to play weak to catch the strong. She'd been talking about letting a rival think they had the upper hand, only to reveal our true position at the perfect moment. I hoped she'd understand what I was about to do. We practiced the call 6 times. George played Vanessa, challenging me, asking questions. By noon, I could deliver the lines without looking at the notes, a confused old man memory failing, accidentally revealing valuable information. At 2 p.m., my phone rang. Philip, Edmund Detective Garrett has the wiretap authorization. The call will be recorded legally. Everything you say, everything she says, it's all admissible evidence. You ready? My hand shook slightly. Ready as I'll ever be. Remember, sound confused but not suspicious. Apologetic. Like you're embarrassed about your memory problems. And Edmund. His voice softened. You're doing the right thing. At 3:30, I dialed Vanessa's number. George sat beside me, hand on my shoulder for support. My heart hammered in my chest. She answered on the second ring. Dad, is everything okay? I let my voice waver, sound thin and uncertain. Vanessa. Is that you, sweetheart? Yes, Dad, it's me. Concern flooded her voice, so natural, so believable. You sound different. Are you all right? I'm sorry about the other day. At George's house. I've been so confused lately. Since the accident. I can't seem to remember things clearly. Oh, Dad, it's okay. We understand. That accident was terrible. You're still recovering. The concern in her voice intensified. She's taking the bait, I thought. I keep forgetting where I put things. Important things. I paused, let the words hang. Like the combination to my safe. A beat of silence. What safe, Dad? I don't remember you having a safe. Perfect. She was playing it carefully, not wanting to seem too interested. In my office. Behind your mother's portrait. My voice cracked slightly, not entirely fake. Talking about Betty while lying to our daughter hurt more than I'd expected. Her jewelry is in there, and some cash. About $50,000 cash. For emergencies. But I changed the combination last month and now I can't remember it. Don't worry about it, Dad. Her voice was soothing, but I could hear something underneath excitement she couldn't quite hide. Maybe you wrote it down somewhere. I think I did. On a notepad. On my desk, maybe, I don't know. I let frustration creep into my voice. My mind isn't what it used to be, Vanessa. Maybe you were right. Maybe I do need help. We'll help you, Dad. We'll figure it out together. She was almost breathless now. Are you home right now? No. Still at George's. But I'm going back tomorrow. I'm exhausted. Need to sleep early tomorrow night. Take something to help me rest. Sleeping pills, vulnerable, alone. That's good, Dad. You need rest. A pause. Listen, why don't Donovan and I stop by tomorrow evening? We can help you look for that combination, get things sorted out. That would be nice, sweetheart. But I'll probably be asleep early. Very tired. That's okay. We have a key. Remember, we'll let ourselves in quietly, won't disturb you. We just want to help. The key she wasn't supposed to have anymore. The one I'd forgotten she'd copied years ago. All right, thank you, Vanessa. I love you. Love you too, Dad. Get some rest. After I hung up, George and I sat in silence. My hands were still shaking. You did good, Ed. George squeezed my shoulder. Real good. I told her exactly where to find $50,000 while I'd be drugged and helpless. The weight of it settled over me. She didn't even hesitate. Didn't suggest waiting until I was awake. Just, we'll let ourselves in, because she's not your daughter anymore, George said quietly. Not the one you raised. Something happened to that girl. The next evening, March 6th, I drove home as the sun was setting. George followed in his own car, parking down the street out of sight. Detective Garrett and his 2 officers were already inside, having entered through the basement earlier that afternoon. I walked through my house, checking their positions. Garrett in the guest bedroom upstairs, perfect view of the hallway and stairs. The 2 officers in the basement ready to move up the back staircase if needed. Radio silence unless something went wrong. Mr. Foster. Garrett's voice was low. Once you're in position with George, stay quiet and stay hidden. When they enter, we'll monitor from up here. The moment they commit to the burglary, the moment they touch that safe, we move. Understood. Understood. And Edmund. He met my eyes. If anything feels wrong, if they deviate from what we expect, you get out. Don't be a hero. That's what we're here for. I nodded, though we both knew I wasn't going anywhere. At 9 p.m., I turned off all the lights. George and I settled into the dark living room, positioned where we could see the back door but remain hidden. Garrett's team had installed additional cameras. With night vision, everything would be recorded. The house was tomb silent. I could hear my own breathing, George's steady presence beside me, the faint sound of the furnace kicking on. George whispered. Betty would be proud of you, standing up like this, doing what's right. I hoped he was right. I hoped Betty would understand why I was setting a trap for our daughter. The minutes crawled by. 9:30, 10. 10:30. My ribs ached from sitting still. My hands had gone numb from gripping the armrest. 11 p.m. In the darkness, I heard Garrett's radio crackle softly, a whispered check-in from the officers downstairs. All clear, still waiting, and then cutting through the silence like a knife. Click. The unmistakable sound of metal on metal. A key turning in the back door lock. My breath caught. George's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezed hard. They'd come. Wait before I reveal the moment they fall into their own trap. Type karma in the comments to let me know you're still watching. Heads up, this story has some dramatized parts for educational purposes. If that bothers you, feel free to click away now. Ready? Let's see justice unfold. Just like we'd predicted. Just like we'd planned. And this time we were ready. Through the crack in the door, I watched them enter. 11:15 p.m., right on schedule. Vanessa came first, dressed in black from head to toe, wearing gloves. Donovan followed close behind, a small flashlight in one hand, a backpack slung over his shoulder. They moved with practiced quiet. This wasn't their first break-in. They didn't turn on any house lights. Just the narrow beam of Donovan's flashlight sweeping across the familiar rooms of my home. My home that they were robbing. My home where they'd already tried twice to get rid of me. George's hand gripped my arm in the darkness. We'd positioned ourselves in the sitting room off the main hall door, cracked just enough to see. Upstairs, I knew Garrett and his officers were watching on monitors, waiting for the perfect moment. "I'll let them commit to it," Garrett had instructed. "Let them go for the safe. That's when we move." Donovan led the way toward the stairs. Of course, they'd go up first. The office was on the second floor, the safe behind Betty's portrait. $50,000 just waiting to be stolen. He put his foot on the first step. Confident, unhesitating. A man who knew this house, who'd studied its layout. First step solid, second step solid. His weight shifted forward as he climbed. Third step, crack. The sound was deafening in the silent house. Wood splintering, screws popping free. The step Donovan had sabotaged 3 nights ago, the same step he'd carefully loosened, testing it to ensure it would collapse under weight, gave way completely. Donovan's eyes went wide. His arms windmilled, grabbing for the railing for anything. But his momentum was already carrying him forward, his foot plunging through the broken step. He lurched sideways, instinctively reaching for Vanessa behind him. His hand caught her arm, pulling her off balance. They went down together, tumbling, crashing bodies hitting the wooden steps with sickening thuds. Vanessa's scream cut through the house. Donovan's curse was cut short as his shoulder slammed into the landing halfway down. They landed in a heap on the mid-stair landing, tangled together. Vanessa was gasping, clutching her wrist. Donovan groaned, trying to push himself up on one arm. I reached out and flipped the light switch. Every light in the house blazed to life at once. Vanessa and Donovan froze, blinking in the sudden glare like criminals caught in a searchlight. Which I suppose they were. I stepped out of the sitting room and stood at the top of the intact stairs, looking down at them. George emerged beside me, his face grim. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Vanessa and Donovan stared up at me, their faces showing a progression of emotions I'd remember for the rest of my life. Shock, then confusion, then the dawning horror of understanding. A funny thing about traps. I said, my voice cold and steady. They have a way of catching whoever's careless enough to walk into them. I descended the stairs slowly, carefully, avoiding the broken third step. Stopped on the landing above them. "You set one for me 3 nights ago. Right here on these stairs. Loosened the screws on steps 3 and 5, the ones I always use coming down for breakfast. You checked them, made sure they'd collapse under my weight, made sure it would look like an accident. An old man still recovering from a car crash falling down the stairs in his own home. Donovan's face had gone pale. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Tonight you came to rob me. $50,000 from a safe you thought I was too confused to protect. I looked at Donovan's backpack, at Vanessa's gloves. You were so focused on the money you forgot about the trap you'd set. You forgot which steps were sabotaged, and you walked right into it. Vanessa's voice came out as a whisper. Dad, I can explain. Don't. The word came out harder than I intended. Don't lie to me anymore. Don't pretend. Don't act. I could hear movement upstairs, Garrett and his officers getting into position. Any moment now, they'd come down. But I needed this. I needed to look my daughter in the eye and let her know that I knew. Everything. The brakes on my truck didn't fail, I said quietly. You had them cut. The fundraiser for emergency surgery I didn't need. The attempt to drain my accounts while I was unconscious. The video where you painted me as mentally unstable. And these stairs you tried to turn my own home into a death trap. Vanessa's face had gone from pale to ashen. Her eyes were wide, searching my face desperately. How did you know? Cameras, I said simply. Every room, every angle. I've watched you break into my home. I've watched Donovan sabotage these stairs. I've recorded every lie, every theft, every attempt to get rid of me. Dad, please. She tried to stand, winced as her weight shifted onto her injured wrist. We can explain. You were just what? My voice remained calm, but something in it made her stop. Just trying to help. Just worried about your confused old father. The same father you've been systematically trying to rob and harm for the past 3 weeks. Donovan finally found his voice. You can't prove anything. It was an accident. We came to check on you. The stairs broke. At 11:30 at night, George cut in. Dressed in black, wearing gloves, carrying an empty backpack. And I can prove everything, I added. Every single thing. The police are upstairs right now. They've been here all night. They watched you break in. They're listening to this conversation. And they've seen all the footage I have. Vanessa's face crumpled. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw real fear in my daughter's eyes. Not the fake tears she'd cried for cameras. Not the performative concern. Real, genuine terror. Dad, please. Her voice broke. We didn't mean... We never wanted to actually, and it actually what I asked. To actually hurt me, to actually get rid of me, because that's exactly what you tried to do. Twice, footsteps on the stairs above us. Detective Garrett appeared flanked by his 2 officers. All 3 had their badges displayed, their expressions professional and grim. Mr. Reed, Miss Foster. Garrett's voice was formal. Don't move. Keep your hands where we can see them. Vanessa looked up at me, her face streaked with tears that I thought might actually be real this time. Dad, did you know? Did you know all along? I looked down at my daughter, Betty's daughter. The little girl I'd raised, the woman who'd tried to get rid of me, and felt nothing but cold, unwavering resolve. I knew everything, Vanessa, everything. I stood on the stairs, looking down at them. My daughter and the man she'd married, sprawled on the landing among the broken pieces of the trap they'd set for me. In that moment, I remembered teaching Vanessa when she was 7 years old. Always tell the truth, even when it's hard. She'd forgotten that lesson. Or maybe she'd just chosen to ignore it. But Dad, please! Vanessa's voice shook as she tried to stand, wincing. This isn't what it looks like. We came to check on you. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Please don't lie to me anymore, Vanessa. I have cameras. Everywhere. I've seen everything. You set us up. Donovan snarled, managing to get to his feet despite obvious pain. You manipulated us, old man. You staged all of this. No, Donovan. I kept my voice level, though my heart was breaking. You trapped yourselves. 3 nights ago, when you broke into my home and loosened these stairs. You did that. You created this trap. Vanessa looked between us, panic rising in her eyes. What? I don't know what you're talking about, Donovan, he's saying. The brakes, Vanessa. I descended one more step, standing just above them. My truck. 3 weeks ago, you insisted on taking it to that garage. You made the appointment. You handed them the keys. You knew exactly what would happen on that mountain road. Her face went pale. The tears started, but this time I couldn't tell if they were real or just another performance. And the fundraiser. I continued, my voice tightening despite my efforts to stay calm. $120,000. My father needs emergency surgery. Except I never needed surgery, did I? Where did that money go, Vanessa? To Matteo Rossi, to pay off Donovan's debts. She stared at the floor, couldn't meet my eyes. Shakicho, you broke into my home. Tried to steal property deeds, financial documents. And when that didn't work fast enough, Donovan came back to sabotage these stairs. To stage it so an old man would just fall, another accident. You don't understand. Donovan suddenly lunged forward, trying to rush up the remaining steps toward me. You don't know what we were facing. They were going to... I stepped back quickly, but I didn't need to. Detective Garrett emerged from the upstairs hallway, his service weapon drawn, but pointed safely downward. That's enough, Mr. Reed. Don't move. 2 uniformed officers appeared from the basement stairwell, also armed, also ready. Donovan froze, his face twisted with rage and fear. Vanessa completely collapsed. She sank to her knees on the landing, sobs racking her body. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dad. We didn't have a choice. The debt. Matteo was going to hurt us. We didn't know what else to do. Her words tumbled out in a rush, a confession she didn't even seem to realize she was making. We just needed the insurance money. We thought you'd survive the accident, just get hurt enough to need care. But when you were completely fine, Donovan said we needed another way. The stairs. The safe. We just needed enough to pay Matteo and start over. I'm sorry. Each word was a knife in my chest. But I couldn't let her see that. Not now. There's always a choice, Vanessa. My voice came out barely above a whisper. You could have asked me for help. You could have told me the truth. Instead, you chose to take my life. That's not desperation. That's greed. No. She looked up at me, mascara running down her face. It wasn't like that. We were scared. We didn't want to hurt you. We just... You cut my brake lines, I said flatly. You created a fundraiser based on lies. You tried to drain my accounts while I was unconscious. You broke into my home multiple times, and when none of that worked, you set a trap in my stairs, hoping I'd fall and break my neck. At what point exactly did you not want to hurt me? She had no answer, just tears and broken sobs. Detective Garrett stepped forward, his voice formal and professional. Vanessa Foster, Donovan Reed, you're both under arrest for breaking and entering attempted burglary conspiracy to commit bodily harm, destruction of property with intent to cause injury, and elder financial exploitation. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As Garrett read them, their Miranda rights, the two uniformed officers moved in. Donovan struggled, cursing and threatening lawsuits, constitutional violations, anything he could think of. It took both officers to restrain him and get the handcuffs on. Vanessa didn't fight. She just stood there limp and sobbing as they cuffed her wrists behind her back. "Dad, please." She turned to look at me one last time as they led her toward the door. "I'm your daughter. Please don't do this." I turned away. I couldn't look at her anymore. George's hand settled on my shoulder, steady and supporting. "Mr. Foster," Garrett said, quietly approaching me. "We'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement. But for tonight, it's over. They're in custody." I nodded, unable to speak. As they led Vanessa and Donovan out, him still fighting her, now silent, except for quiet weeping, their footsteps echoed through the house. My house. The home Betty and I had built, the place that should have been safe. At the door, Vanessa looked back one final time. "Dad, please." But I couldn't look at her. The daughter I'd raised, the little girl who'd held my hand, who'd called me her hero, who'd climbed into my lap to hear bedtime stories, had died the moment she cut my brake lines. The woman crying now was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Edmund," George said softly, "come on. Let's sit down." I let him guide me to the sitting room, away from the broken stairs, away from the evidence of my daughter's betrayal. Through the window, I watched the police cars pull away, red and blue lights fading into the March night. Garrett stayed behind for a moment, making notes, coordinating with his officers to secure the scene as evidence. "Mr. Foster," he said before leaving, "what you did tonight took courage. Not many parents could do what you just did." "I didn't have a choice," I said quietly. "You did," Garrett corrected gently. "You could have looked the other way, pretended not to see, forgiven and forgotten. A lot of people do, especially with family. But you chose justice. You chose to protect yourself and hold them accountable. That matters." After he left, George and I sat in the quiet house. The broken stairs, the evidence bags, the recording equipment that had captured everything. "You okay?" George asked. I thought about that. Was I okay? My daughter was in handcuffs. My son-in-law had tried to attack me. The family Betty and I had built was shattered beyond repair. So I said honestly, "But I will be." Because somewhere beneath the pain, beneath the betrayal, I felt something else, relief. It was over. They couldn't hurt me anymore. The trap had closed, and justice, cold and impartial, had been served. But as I sat there in the house that now felt too empty, too quiet, I couldn't shake the image of Vanessa's face as they led her away. The tears, the pleading. "I'm your daughter." She was right. She was my daughter, and that's what made this so unforgivably painful. They say closure brings peace. They lied. Dawn broke over Denver on March 7th, painting the mountains gold and pink. Beautiful, indifferent. The world kept turning as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. I sat alone in my living room, still wearing yesterday's clothes. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's face as they led her away. "I'm your daughter." George let himself in. I'd given him a spare key weeks ago. He found me staring at nothing, empty coffee cup cold in my hands. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just went to the kitchen and started making breakfast. Pancakes. Betty's recipe, the one with cinnamon and vanilla. The smell filled the house with memories I wasn't ready to face. "You should eat something, Ed." I looked at the plate he set in front of me. Couldn't imagine swallowing. I keep thinking. My voice sounded hollow, unfamiliar. Where did I go wrong, George? When did she change, or was she always like this and I just didn't want to see it? George sat across from me, his weathered face full of sympathy. "You didn't go wrong, Edmund. Sometimes people make choices we can't predict or prevent. You loved her. You raised her right. Betty raised her right. What Vanessa chose to do. That's on her, not you." The investigation consumed the next 4 months like a slow-burning fire. March to April, the investigation. Detective Garrett was thorough, methodical. He left no stone unturned. The forensic examination came first. Against all odds, they'd recovered enough fragments of my truck's brake system from the scrapyard. Dr. Nathan Cross, a forensic mechanical expert, who'd testified in dozens of cases, spent 3 days examining the pieces. His report was damning. The brake line hadn't failed from natural wear. It had been cut cleanly, precisely with a tool that left distinctive marks. "This was deliberate sabotage, Mr. Foster," he told me in Garrett's office. "The cut was placed to leave just enough integrity to survive normal driving, but fail completely under heavy braking pressure, like on a mountain pass, in the snow. The financial trail was easier to follow. Garrett's team traced every dollar of the GoFundMe fraud. $120,000 from strangers who'd believed Vanessa's tears. The money had flowed into her joint account with Donovan between March 1st and 15th. Then out again just as quickly. $50,000 to Matteo Rossi, a payment Roger Caldwell's records confirmed. $40,000 to online gambling sites, all tied to Donovan's accounts. $30,000 in cash withdrawals, ATM receipts showing a pattern of luxury spending. Hotels, restaurants, designer stores. They'd been celebrating, planning their new life with my insurance money. Roger provided a complete financial history, showing Vanessa's attempted $200,000 withdrawal on February 17th, while I'd been unconscious in the hospital. The witness interviews painted an even clearer picture. Dr. Chambers and Nurse Rivers testified about Vanessa's brief visits, her constant filming, how the tears stopped when the cameras turned off. Neighbors reported seeing Vanessa and Donovan at my house when I wasn't home. The mechanic who'd worked on my truck confirmed Vanessa had brought it in 3 weeks before the accident, paid cash, insisted on same-day service for a brake inspection. Mr. Terry Hoffman, the man who'd found me after the crash, provided crucial timeline testimony. But the most devastating evidence came on March 20th. Matteo Rossi sat across from me in Garrett's office, his expensive suit and cold eyes belonging to a different world than mine. He'd been granted immunity in exchange for his testimony. Mr. Reed owed my organization $380,000. Matteo said calmly, as if discussing the weather. Payment was due March 15th. When I expressed concern about his ability to pay, he assured me money would be coming soon from a family inheritance. When I asked when the relative would pass, he said soon, very soon. This conversation occurred on February 10th, 5 days before my accident. Premeditation, planning, intent. Philip had exactly what he needed. May Edmund's testimony, giving my deposition, was harder than anything I'd done. Harder than setting the trap. Harder than watching them get arrested. Sitting in that conference room, lawyers on both sides taking notes, forced to relive every moment of betrayal. They asked about my relationship with Vanessa, how it had changed after Betty died, whether I'd noticed warning signs, what I'd felt when I realized what she'd done. The hardest question came from Vanessa's defense attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Andrea Klein. "Mr. Foster, do you love your daughter?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I do. That's why this hurts so much." June building the case. Philip assembled everything into a comprehensive prosecution case. Attempted bodily harm, 2 counts. The brake sabotage and the stair sabotage, both with clear intent to cause serious injury. Wire fraud. The GoFundMe scam, $120,000 obtained through deliberate deception. Burglary, multiple counts of breaking and entering. Conspiracy, Vanessa and Donovan acting in concert. Financial exploitation of an elderly person, the attempted account drain. And underlying it all, the context. Mateo's testimony provided desperate people drowning in debt who decided murder was easier than honesty. Franklin Ashford wrote a character witness statement. 30 years of friendship distilled into 3 pages. If Edmund Foster says his daughter tried to harm him, I believe him completely. He is one of the most honest men I've ever known. This testimony costs him everything. He would not make it if it weren't true. The local news picked up the story. Daughter accused of plotting father's death for insurance money. Philip handled the media requests. I refused every interview, tried to maintain what little privacy remained. By late June, the case was airtight. Garrett assured me the evidence was overwhelming. Philip said the prosecution was confident. But when I looked in the mirror each morning, I barely recognized the man staring back. I'd lost 15 pounds. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. I looked 10 years older than I had 4 months ago. "Edmund, you need to take care of yourself," George said one evening, finding me sitting in the dark. "Betty wouldn't want—" "Betty's not here, George." My voice was flat. "And neither is Vanessa. At least not the Vanessa I knew." He sat beside me in the darkness. "The trial's in 2 weeks. July 10th. You ready?" Was I ready to sit in a courtroom and watch my daughter be prosecuted? To hear lawyers dissect our family, our lives, every moment of betrayal laid out for strangers to judge? "I don't think I'll ever be ready," I said honestly. By the end of June, the case was solid as concrete. Garrett promised the evidence was overwhelming. Philip said the prosecution was supremely confident. But when I looked at myself in the mirror each morning, I almost didn't recognize the man looking back. Vanessa hadn't just tried to take my life. She'd taken something irreplaceable: my ability to trust, my sense of safety in my own home, and my belief that family meant something in this world. The trial would determine her legal guilt. But my own verdict, the one that mattered most, was already in. My daughter was gone. The woman in that jail cell wearing her face was a stranger, and no amount of justice could bring back what I'd lost. The courtroom smelled of old wood, stale coffee, and broken promises. Betty used to say, "Justice is slow, but it comes." Sitting in Denver District Court on July 8th, I hoped she was right. Judge Catherine Bennett took the bench at 9 a.m., mid-60s, silver hair eyes that had seen every darkness. The gallery was packed, media-curious citizens, people who'd followed the case online. George sat behind me, Philip beside him, Franklin next to Philip. Vanessa sat with her public defender, Andrea Klein. She looked diminished, thinner, pale hair, pulled back, no makeup. At the second table, Donovan sat with his private attorney, Douglas Hale, jaw set and defiant. Prosecutor Thomas Crane stood, voice filling the room. This is a case about greed, betrayal, and desperation. The defendants conspired to harm Edmund Foster to claim a $2.5 million life insurance policy. When their first attempt failed, they tried again. We will prove beyond reasonable doubt they are guilty of attempted bodily harm, wire fraud, burglary, and conspiracy. Klein countered for Vanessa. My client made mistakes under extreme pressure. She was threatened, she panicked. But she never intended serious harm. She called emergency services, visited her father in the hospital. This is a family in crisis, not a criminal conspiracy. Hale was more aggressive. The prosecution relies on circumstantial evidence. Video footage is inconclusive. Mr. Reed had legitimate reasons to be at Mr. Foster's home. The stair incident was a tragic accident, not sabotage. The first day unfolded with methodical precision, as Crane built his case witness by witness. Detective Paul Garrett testified about the investigation timeline, and then the videos played on large screens. The courtroom went silent. Watching Vanessa enter my home on February 26th, rifling through my office. Her return with Donovan on the 27th. And finally, most damning, Donovan's midnight visit on March 3rd, carefully loosening the stair screws. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Jurors leaned forward, taking notes. Dr. Nathan Cross, the forensic mechanic expert, displayed photographs of my brake line. This cut is inconsistent with natural wear. The pattern indicates a sharp blade applied with deliberate pressure, leaving just enough integrity to survive until heavy braking on a steep descent. Hale tried to suggest accident damage. Dr. Cross was unshakable. I've examined thousands of brake failures. This was intentional. Roger Caldwell detailed Vanessa's attempted $200,000 withdrawal while I was unconscious, then traced the GoFundMe fraud, $120,000 raised, $50,000 to Matteo Rossi, $40,000 to gambling sites, $30,000 in luxury spending. The dramatic moment came when Matteo Rossi entered, flanked by marshals. Mr. Reed owed $380,000 due March 15th. When I asked when payment would come, he said, "Very soon," from an inheritance. This was February 10th, 5 days before my accident. Premeditation. Hospital staff confirmed Vanessa's minimal visits, her focus on filming rather than caring. The second day brought the testimony I'd been dreading. Taking the witness stand meant recounting every betrayal while Vanessa sat 20 feet away, unable to meet my eyes. Crane led me through gently. My relationship with Vanessa before Betty died. The changes after. The garage incident, the accident, the moment I realized something was terribly wrong. When I saw her video claiming I needed emergency surgery when I didn't. That's when I couldn't deny it anymore. Klein cross-examined carefully. Could isolation have affected your judgment? My judgment is sound. I have video evidence. Then came the question I'd been dreading. Do you love your daughter, Mr. Foster? I looked at Vanessa. Real tears this time, I thought. I did. I still do. That's what makes this so painful. Several jurors wiped their eyes. Franklin Ashford provided powerful character testimony about our 30-year friendship. If Edmund Foster says his daughter tried to harm him, I believe him without question. Then Vanessa took the stand. She cried through most of her testimony, blaming Donovan for acting alone. I didn't know about the brake line. I thought the accident was just an accident. I was looking for documents to help manage Dad's affairs. He seemed confused. The fundraiser was a mistake. I panicked. We needed money. I didn't think it through. Crane's cross-examination was surgical. You insisted your father take his truck to that specific garage, correct, and 3 weeks later his brakes failed. You raised $120,000, claiming he needed emergency surgery when he didn't. You lied, you stole, and you conspired to remove the one person standing between you and $5 million. Vanessa sobbed, unable to answer. The jury watched her tears with obvious skepticism. Donovan didn't testify. Hale invoked his Fifth Amendment right. The jury noted it always a bad sign. The third day brought closing arguments. Crane was devastating. The evidence is overwhelming. Video forensic testimony, financial records showing clear motive. Vanessa Foster may cry, but tears don't erase attempted harm, fraud, and conspiracy. Klein tried to humanize Vanessa. She's not a predator. She's a daughter who lost her way under extreme pressure. Hale argued reasonable doubt. Video footage is grainy. Stairs could have degraded naturally. There's reasonable doubt. Judge Bennett instructed the jury. They deliberated 4 hours. At 6:15 p.m. they returned. Vanessa Foster guilty on all counts. Attempted bodily harm, wire fraud, burglary, conspiracy. Donovan Reed guilty on all counts. Attempted bodily harm, twice, burglary, conspiracy, extortion. Vanessa collapsed, sobbing. Donovan's face went stone cold. Judge Bennett addressed them directly. You've been convicted of serious crimes against a family member. The betrayal of trust here is profound. Vanessa Foster received 20 years in state prison, eligible for parole after 14. Donovan Reed received 25 years, eligible after 18. Both ordered to pay $120,000 in restitution. Vanessa was led away, weeping. Donovan went silently, rage in his eyes. George hugged me. Franklin gripped my shoulder. Philip said, "Justice has been served." But as the gavel fell, I felt no satisfaction, no relief, no victory. Just the crushing weight of what I'd lost. The jury had found them guilty. The judge had sentenced them to decades in prison. But no verdict could restore what was truly gone, my daughter. Not the woman who'd conspired against me, but the little girl who'd held my hand and called me her hero. That girl had been sentenced long before today, and her sentence was for life. 5 days after the verdict, I stood in front of my Cherry Creek house in the morning light. The Victorian structure looked the same as always, 3 stories of history, 30 years of memories. But it felt different somehow. Lighter, maybe. Or perhaps I was the one who felt lighter. George stood beside me, hands in his pockets. You could sell it, you know. Start fresh somewhere else. This place has too many memories. I looked at the house Betty and I had chosen together. The porch where we'd had our morning coffee. The window of the room where we'd raised Vanessa. The front door we'd painted blue because Betty loved that color. No. I said, my voice steady. Betty and I built this home together. We raised Vanessa here. Yes, terrible things happened. But this house also holds 30 years of love, laughter, and good memories. I won't let them take that from me, too. George smiled. Betty would be proud of that decision. The renovation started the next day. First priority, the stairs. I had the old wooden staircase completely removed. Every step, every rail, every piece of the trap Donovan had set. The contractors hauled it away in pieces, and I felt something lift from my chest as I watched it go. The new staircase was modern, solid, with metal railings and broader steps. Different. Safer. When the workers finished on July 29th, I walked up and down it a dozen times, testing it, needing to trust it. George watched me pace. It's a good staircase, Ed. Solid. I know. I just need to convince myself. The rest of the house followed. We repainted the walls Betty's favorite light blue in the living room. Changed all the locks, every single one. Vanessa's old keys would never work again. I rearranged furniture, making the spaces feel new, feel mine. The hardest task was Vanessa's old bedroom. George helped me sort through it. Most of her belongings went to charity. I kept a few photographs from when she was young, before the betrayal, before the greed. The little girl with pigtails who'd called me her hero. I put those in a box in the closet. The rest I couldn't look at. "You're doing good, Ed," George said as we worked. "Taking your home back." On August 5th, I met Franklin Ashford at a coffee shop downtown. He'd been checking on me regularly since the trial, making sure I was managing. "Franklin, I want to do something with that money. The $120,000 in restitution from the GoFundMe fraud." He leaned forward, interested. "What are you thinking? A scholarship fund? In Betty's name? For students who've lost a parent? Kids who need financial help for college?" Franklin's eyes grew moist. "Edmund, that's beautiful. Betty would love that." People donated that money thinking they were helping someone. They were deceived, but their kindness was real. I want something good to come from it. Something Betty would approve of. We spent the next 2 weeks setting it up. The Betty Foster Memorial Scholarship. $120,000 in initial funding managed through a community foundation. 3 to 4 awards annually for students who'd lost a mother or father. Priority for those pursuing law, Betty's field, or medicine. The local paper ran a story, "From Betrayal to Benevolence." Foster creates scholarship from daughter's fraud money. I refused interviews but allowed them to publicize the scholarship. Let something good come from all that pain. Slowly, painfully, I reconnected with the life I'd abandoned. I started reading again books Betty used to recommend. Worked in the garden tending the roses she'd planted. Learned to cook from her old recipe book, following her handwritten notes in the margins. George kept inviting me to play golf. I refused twice before finally agreeing on August 20th. Standing on that green course, sunlight warm on my face, fresh air filling my lungs, it felt almost normal. George told a terrible joke about a golfer and a priest. I laughed. Actually laughed, the sound surprising me. "I can still do that," I said quietly. "I thought I'd forgotten how." George clapped my shoulder. "You're going to be okay, Ed. It'll take time, but you're going to be okay." He was right. Each day got a little easier. I woke up without fear. Walked down the new stairs without anxiety. Looked at Vanessa's childhood photos without crying. Started thinking about the future instead of dwelling on the past. The house still had ghosts. Betty's laughter in the kitchen. Vanessa's childhood footsteps on the stairs. Echoes of what was and what might have been. But maybe, just maybe, I could learn to live with those ghosts instead of running from them. I was 65 years old. I'd survived worse than betrayal. I'd survived losing Betty. I'd survived a murder plot. And I would survive this too, not unscathed. The scars ran deep in my heart, in my trust, in my understanding of family. But I was still here, still standing, still capable of laughter and purpose and hope. The Betty Foster Memorial Scholarship would award its first recipients in the fall. 3 students who'd lost parents would get help paying for college. 3 lives touched by something good that came from something terrible, that felt like redemption. Not for Vanessa, she'd made her choices, but for the rest of us. For the donors who'd been deceived. For Betty's memory. For me. George had asked if I was okay. The honest answer was not yet, but I would be. And sometimes that was victory enough. Some doors once closed should never be opened again. But curiosity had always been my weakness. On the afternoon of September 15th, 2024, I collected the mail as usual, Bill's junk mail catalogs. One envelope stood out plain white with a prison postmark in the upper left corner. Colorado Women's Correctional Facility. The return address simply read Vanessa Foster. I recognized her looping handwriting immediately. I stood in the entryway staring at the envelope, my hands trembling slightly. A neighbor waved hello. I didn't notice. Eventually, I walked inside, placed the letter on the kitchen table, and stared at it for an hour without touching it. Made coffee. Still stared. That evening, George arrived for our weekly dinner. He recognized the letter instantly. "From her?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. George sat down. "Have you opened it?" "No," said. "I don't know if I should." George watched me for a long moment, then asked gently, "What are you afraid you'll find inside?" "I don't know. An apology excuses manipulation, or maybe nothing that changes anything." George was quiet, then said, "Edmund, you don't have to read it. But maybe you should. For closure. Not for her. For you." What if reading it just reopens old wounds? What if not reading it makes you wonder forever? After George left, I sat alone with the letter. I thought of Betty. What would you do? Her voice echoed in my memory. Face things honestly, Edmund, even the painful ones. I picked up the letter, turned it over in my hands, took a deep breath, and carefully opened the envelope. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten, tear-stained, so the ink bled. "Dear Dad, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away unopened. But I need to try. I need you to know. I'm sorry." Vanessa wrote that nothing she said could be enough, but it was the truth. She was sorry for what she did to me. Every night she lay awake thinking about it, about my face when they were arrested, about the disappointment in my eyes. She explained that Donovan and she had been drowning in debt, that Mateo's people were threatening them, that she had been terrified. But that didn't excuse what they did. Donovan told her it would be simple. I'd have a minor accident, nothing serious, just enough to file an insurance claim. She had convinced herself I wouldn't really be hurt. Now she saw how foolish and cruel that sounded. When I survived the truck accident, she felt relieved. Truly. But Donovan said they'd gone too far to stop, that Mateo would hurt them without the money. She should have said no. She should have come to me for help. But she'd been too ashamed and afraid of Donovan. She wrote that she didn't know about the staircase sabotage until after it happened. Donovan had done it alone. She closed the letter. "Dad, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just need you to know that the daughter you raised is still in here somewhere, under all the mistakes and terrible choices. The little girl who loved you is still here. I think about Mom every day. What would she think of me? I have 20 years to think about what I've done. I don't expect you to write back. I just want you to know I'm sorry, and I still love you even though I've destroyed every right to say that. Your daughter, Vanessa." I finished reading, set the letter down, sat in silence for a long time. I'd expected to feel angry, hurt something. In reality, I felt empty, numb, nothing. The letter said all the right things, but it was too late. Was she truly remorseful, or just regretful she'd been caught? Would anything she wrote change what happened? I folded the letter carefully, didn't throw it away, didn't leave it somewhere visible, but placed it in a drawer with other past items, old photos, Betty's letters, memories. I made my decision. I wouldn't reply. Not out of anger. There was simply nothing left to say. The next day I called Philip, mentioned the letter. "Do you want to respond?" Philip asked. "No," I said. What would I say? "I forgive you"? That would be a lie. "I'll never forgive you." That gives her too much power over me. "So what will you do?" "Nothing. She made her choices. Now she lives with the consequences. I don't need to be part of her journey anymore. Forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't for the other person. It's about releasing yourself from the weight of anger and pain. But freedom doesn't mean letting them back into your life. It means accepting they're gone and being okay with that. Vanessa made her choices. 20 years in prison was her consequence. My consequence was learning to live without the daughter I once had. We both received life sentences in different ways. The difference was I got to choose what I did with mine. The dead cannot answer our questions, but sometimes speaking to them helps us answer our own. At 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, October 12th, 2024, I drove to Riverside Cemetery. I hadn't visited since Betty's funeral in September 2021, 3 years. I had avoided it, too painful, too final. Today felt different. I was ready. I brought purple tulips, her favorite. Simple, elegant, like her. My hands trembled as I parked. The walk through the cemetery was quiet and orderly. The grass trimmed the paths clean. I remembered the way without thinking. Section C, row 12. Plot 7. The granite headstone stood dignified and gray. Betty Margaret Foster, 1956 to 2021. Beloved wife, mother, advocate, justice is truth in action. I stood frozen for a moment. The grave was well kept, perhaps by the grounds crew, perhaps by George. Slowly I knelt, ignoring the protest in my knees, and laid the tulips at the base. Then I sat on the grass beside the stone, leaning against it, and spoke softly. "Hi, Betty. I'm sorry I stayed away so long. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to face you after everything." The wind stirred through nearby trees. Our daughter, Betty, our daughter, tried to kill me. Even now the words felt foreign. The trial was 3 months ago. She got 20 years. I wiped my eyes. I keep asking where we went wrong. Did I spoil her? Did we fail to teach her what mattered? You taught her integrity. You built your career on justice. And she chose the opposite. Silence settled around me. Or maybe losing you broke her in ways I didn't see. I was drowning in my own grief. I didn't notice hers turning into something darker. Donovan found her when she was vulnerable. Maybe if I'd been stronger. I shook my head. You'd tell me to stop blaming myself. You always said people choose their paths. Still, she was our little girl. Remember the dandelions she'd bring you, calling them beautiful flowers? I smiled through tears. I miss you. You would have known what to say to her. You could reach her in ways I never could. A stronger gust of wind brushed my face, and I almost imagined her listening. "I know you can't come back. Wishing doesn't change anything. You taught me that too." I sat quietly for a while. "I've tried to move forward. We created that scholarship fund, you'd love it. It helps children who've lost parents. The money from Vanessa's fraud is doing something good now. That feels like you turning darkness into light." I finished the house renovations. New staircase, fresh paint, your favorite blue in the living room. It's starting to feel like home again. George has been steady. Franklin too. And Philip. They became the family I needed when my own family failed me. Another pause. Vanessa wrote from prison. She said she was sorry. Maybe she means it. Maybe she regrets being caught. I don't know. I read it and I didn't reply. And for now, that feels right. Is it wrong that I'm not ready to forgive her? Maybe I never will. Does that make me a bad father? I waited, imagining her answer. You'd probably say forgiveness takes time, that it's a journey, that I should give myself grace. I nodded faintly. I'm trying, Betty. I'm trying to live in a way that would make you proud, to honor you without letting bitterness swallow me. I'm 65 now. When you died, I thought my life ended. Then it felt like it ended again when Vanessa betrayed me. But I'm still here, still standing. Maybe that's enough. Carefully, I rose to my feet and brushed grass from my trousers. I touched the cool stone. I promise I'll live, not just exist. I'll visit more often. I'll keep the scholarship going. I'll take care of myself. I'll remember the good years with Vanessa, the child she was, before everything fell apart. I won't let the worst moments erase the beautiful ones. And I'll keep talking to you, even if you can't answer. Just believing you'd be proud of me, that's enough. I pressed my fingertips to the headstone. I love you, Betty. Always. As I walked back to the car, I turned for one last look. The cemetery was peaceful leaves rustling in the mild October breeze. I felt lighter, not joyful, but steadier, as if something inside me had finally settled. Autumn sunlight broke through the clouds and warmed my face. Betty used to say the sun always comes after the storm. She was right about that. The storm had passed. It left scars, yes. It changed everything. But it passed, and I was still standing, still breathing, still able to feel warmth on my skin and hope in my chest. Sometimes that is enough. At 65, I thought my life was winding down to its final chapter. Turns out I was wrong. November 8th, George arrived for morning coffee. Edmund, I want you to come somewhere with me today. The senior center downtown. Book club meets today. I resisted. George, I'm not ready for bingo and small talk with strangers. It's not like that, trust me, just try it once. I agreed reluctantly. George had earned my trust. The Denver Senior Center was modern, bright, welcoming. Activity everywhere, art classes, yoga, chess, computer lessons. At 10:30-12, people gathered for book club, discussing Kazuo Ishiguro's The Remains of the Day. I hadn't read it, just listened. The discussion was intelligent, non-judgmental. After book club came coffee. I met Harold Hal Simpson, 70 Navy veteran, retired electrician, wife died in 2019. He approached with a smile. You're the new guy George mentioned. Welcome. Book club's great, but wait till you try Thursday poker. He winked. I smiled, my first genuine smile with a stranger in months. I noticed the volunteer board. Food bank volunteers needed Tuesdays. George said, I volunteer there sometimes. Franklin too. Very meaningful. November 15th, I returned. Franklin and I sorted donated goods, packed boxes for families, distributed them. The 3-hour shift left me physically tired, but spiritually fulfilled. I met struggling families, single mothers, elderly couples, veterans. My problems weren't unique. Everyone has pain. Through November and December, I became a regular Thursday book club, Tuesday food bank, Friday coffee social, occasional golf. I formed connections. Hal became a real friend. Other members included Margaret, a retired teacher, Robert, a retired firefighter, and Alice, a widow and poet. They respected my privacy, knew I had family issues, didn't judge. For the first time, I laughed at Hal's terrible golf joke. For the first time, I talked about Betty without crying when Margaret asked. For the first time, I felt like Edmund again, not just a victim or survivor. December 18th. I hosted a holiday dinner, the first time the house would be full since everything happened. Guests included George Franklin and his wife Philip Hal and Margaret. I cooked Betty's recipes, turkey mashed potatoes, green bean casserole pie. The house smelled like home cinnamon roasted meat warmth. 6 o'clock guests arrived with wine and desserts. Laughter filled the house. Hal told Navy stories. Margaret recited a Christmas poem she'd written. Franklin raised his glass. To Edmund, the man who faced darkness and chose light. Everyone raised their glasses. I was moved. To friends who became family. After dinner, George caught my eye from across the room and smiled. I looked around the house full of warmth, people who truly cared not by blood, but by choice, a future that seemed possible. I thought, this is good, really good. As George left, he said, "You did good tonight, Edmund. Welcome back, friend." That night, cleaning up washing dishes, putting away chairs, finding George's forgotten scarf, I realized something profound. Vanessa had tried to take my life, my money, my house, my honor, but she couldn't take my future. That was something I had to build myself. And for the first time in a year, I truly wanted to build it. Not because I had to, not because I was supposed to, but because life, even at 65, even after betrayal, even after loss, still had moments worth living for. Like tonight. Like this. If you had asked me a year ago where I would be today, I never would have guessed this still alive, changed, scarred, but somehow. Okay. 7 o'clock, February 15th, 2025. I woke naturally, sunlight slipping through the curtains. I glanced at the calendar and felt the weight of the date, exactly 1 year since the accident. I walked to the window. Snow drifted down softly, just like that night. But this snow was peaceful, not deadly. The same conditions, a different outcome. I brewed coffee the way Betty taught me, and sat in the renovated living room. The new staircase stood solid and safe. I let myself reflect. 1 year ago, I was lying in an icy ravine, my daughter standing above me with cold eyes, deciding whether to call for help. Today, I'm here, drinking coffee, breathing, living. The road from there to here, accident investigation trial, healing, rebuilding, was not an ending I ever imagined for my family. When Betty and I brought Vanessa home from the hospital 33 years ago, wrapped in a pink blanket, we pictured school plays, graduations, weddings, grandchildren. Not courtrooms, not prison sentences, but this was the ending that had to happen. The alternative was letting her succeed. And I chose to live. I used to believe blood was everything, that family bonds were unbreakable. I learned otherwise. Family isn't who shares your DNA. Family is who shows up when you're shattered. George, every morning coffee, every doubt, every victory. Franklin, Philip, Hal, the senior center community. None of them share my blood. But they stayed. They chose me. That's family. Vanessa was my daughter. She carried my name, my love, 33 years of memories. And she chose greed over all of it. For months I asked where I went wrong. Did I spoil her? Did we fail her? Eventually, I understood we gave her the tools. She chose not to use them. You can't save someone who doesn't want saving. You can only decide whether you'll let them drag you down too. I chose to save myself. That isn't selfish. it's survival. People ask if I've forgiven her. Even my therapist, yes, I see one now. George insisted, and he was right. The answer is complicated. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I couldn't if I tried. It doesn't mean saying it's okay. It isn't. It doesn't mean opening my door to her again. That door is closed for my safety. It doesn't mean she doesn't deserve 20 years behind bars. She does. For me, forgiveness means releasing the anger so it doesn't poison me. It means recognizing her choices belong to her, not to me. Her betrayal doesn't define my worth. Some days I feel forgiveness. Some days I don't. And I've learned that's acceptable. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a process, maybe a lifelong one. Forgiving her doesn't mean reconciling. I can wish her healing and still never see her again. Those are separate decisions. The hardest part wasn't physical recovery. It was learning to trust again. After betrayal, every kindness looks suspicious. Every offer of help feels like a trap. I questioned George. I questioned Franklin. I questioned everyone. But I realized fear is another prison. So I chose cautious trust. Verify, but don't assume the worst. Protect yourself, but don't close your heart entirely. A closed heart may be safe, but it is also lonely. Trust now is earned. George shows up every morning. Hal still tells terrible jokes. The senior center respects my boundaries. Trust isn't blind anymore. It's built on consistency, and that's healthier. This year taught me something else. Money reveals character. $2.5 million was enough for Vanessa to stop seeing me as her father and see me as an obstacle. Money didn't create her greed. It exposed it. Real strength isn't in endless forgiveness. It's in walking away and building something better. In saying I deserve peace and believing it. There is no shame in protecting yourself. Even from family. Especially from family if they've proven dangerous. You don't owe toxic people your presence, your energy, or your forgiveness. You owe yourself safety, peace, and a future. Looking back at this family story, I realize how easily trust can blind us. For 33 years, I believed blood meant loyalty. I was wrong. This family story taught me that DNA doesn't guarantee devotion. Sometimes it hides betrayal. If you're hearing this, don't be like me. Don't assume your children, siblings, or parents will always have your best interests at heart, simply because you share a name. Verify their intentions. Protect your assets. Set boundaries early. I didn't, and it nearly cost me my life. Here's what I learned, not from books, but from surviving. First, money reveals character faster than anything else. When I had wealth, Vanessa saw an inheritance, not a father. My advice: never let anyone, family or otherwise, know the full extent of your finances. Guard that information like your life depends on it. Because sometimes it does. Second, forgiveness is for you, not them. People misunderstand dad revenge. They think it means seeking vengeance, destroying the person who hurt you. But real dad revenge isn't about harming them back. It's about building a life so good they realize what they lost. It's about choosing peace over their chaos. That's the revenge that heals you. Third, chosen family is stronger than blood. George, Franklin, Philip, Hal, these men weren't related to me. But they became my brothers when my own daughter became my enemy. This family story would have ended differently without them. Find your people, the ones who show up when everything falls apart. Fourth, it's never too late to start over. I was 65 when my world collapsed. I could have given up. Instead, I rebuilt. Age is just a number when you still have breath in your lungs and hope in your heart. In my darkest moments, I asked God why this happened. Why did my daughter, my treasure, become my nightmare? I don't have all the answers. But I believe God let me survive for a reason. Maybe to tell this story. Maybe to help someone like you recognize the warning signs I missed. Maybe to prove that even at 65, after the ultimate betrayal, life is still worth living. Personally, I think this family story isn't unique. Somewhere right now, someone is being manipulated by a family member they trust. Someone is being pressured to sign documents they shouldn't. Someone is choosing silence over safety because they're family. If that's you, hear me, family should protect you, not prey on you. If they're toxic, you owe them nothing. Not your money, not your life, not even your forgiveness. So here's my final advice: don't wait for betrayal to force you into action. Set boundaries now. Document everything. Trust, but verify. And if someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. That's not dad revenge. That's self-preservation. That's wisdom. If this story resonated with you, if you saw yourself, a friend or a relative, in any part of this journey, I need you to do something for me. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Have you experienced betrayal from family? Would you have opened Vanessa's letter? Rate this video out of 10. Your honest score helps me create better content for you. If you found value here, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss future stories. Your support means everything. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I know this wasn't an easy family story to hear, but sometimes the hardest stories are the ones we need most. Before you go, a quick note. The next story contains some fictional elements created for educational purposes. If you're uncomfortable with dramatized narratives, feel free to exit now and choose content that better suits your preferences. No hard feelings, I respect your choice. Until next time, protect yourself. Choose wisely, and remember, the sun always comes after the storm.